thank you for all being here. We are two recruiters and a microphone. My name is Pete Cochran, and
I'm Israel Swanson.
That is correct. And we are here with our good friend, Andrew Rush. First off, so just a couple different things. This is actually going to be something where we're not going to all do the questions. So we're going to probably do about 30 minutes of questions to find out a little bit more about Andrew's journey and story. And then we're actually going to open it up to all of you. So we definitely encourage everybody to chime in and ask as many questions as possible. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and kick this off. So Andrew.
Before you do that, real quick. Yes. How many, show of hands, how many people know who Andrew Rush is or have ever heard him talk?
Okay.
Just trying to. Good. Okay, good. So we've got a base layer of Andrew fandom. Okay, go Pete.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes, it is.
I'm a fan.
I'm a huge fan.
I'm a fan boy.
You guys are very kind.
No pressure. I wanted to rush to get here.
Right.
That's good. I've never heard that before. You're very clever.
No, I'm not.
No, this is awesome. So Andrew, you and I have known each other for what, 15, 16 years now?
Yeah.
So I'll give you guys a little bit of a story. I met Andrew when he was still an IP attorney after Stetson. You know, you worked for a firm. And I had a startup at the time called Roster that I was doing some stuff with, and I had a chance to meet Andrew. And you completely pivoted into space tech. So give me a little bit of even the backstory, how you even got into law, right? Like UNF, Stetson, and then like where did the space tech come from?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was raised by two Georgia Tech chemical engineers who grew up here in Jacksonville. My family is like 5th or 6th generation Jacksonville. So we've been here since before air conditioning, which, as all of you know, makes us very loyal and kind of stupid. And I was raised on this steady diet of science fiction and science fact, like Star Trek and physics books. Yeah. And so when I went to undergrad, I got a degree in physics from the University of North Florida, and I was like, I'm gonna be an astrophysicist. And somewhere in undergrad, I started this company, and we sold redneck toys. We sold airsoft guns and samurai swords and that kind of stuff.
Redneck toys?
Yeah.
Okay, is that what it was called? RedneckToys.com?
We should have gotten that done. I could have sold that for a lot of money these days.
Yes, you could have.
Yeah. And so I was talking about like grad school to a professor, and I said, oh, I really love space. I really love science, but I also really like business.
Right.
And, because I have this company, and he said, oh, Andrew, there's a decent number of people that have a physics background that go into law, that become patent lawyers. And I was like, oh, that seems really interesting. And that's this merger of the two things that I really love.
Right.
And so that led me to going to law school. And when I was in law school, the bar for being a patent lawyer is actually separate from the regular lawyer bar. So I took that and then just called a bunch of space companies and said, hey, I have these skills. I want to work with you. Can I come and can I come out for a summer internship? And I did that, and I worked in my very first space company, in the summer of my second year, and then had some clients. Came back to Jacksonville, built up a practice, became the partner of the Jacksonville office here, and one of my biggest clients was this company called Made in Space, which had invented a method for doing 3D printing in space, and had this ambition to build, Dyson spheres one day, and I'll do all these really cool sci-fi things, but took that vision and broke it down into small chunks, and then built on that. And the founding CEO of that company created this text-based concierge service in about 2015 called Magic. There was a brief, spurt of articles about it, like TechCrunch and all these kind of things, and they put it on Hackaday, and they got 50,000 user requests in a weekend.
They're in California.
And they're in California. Yeah. And so all these people wanted to invest in it. Ashton Kutcher came to the building to invest in it. They turned him down, so he invested in a competitor.
Naturally.
Yeah.
He just went across the street and
Yeah,
invested in someone
basically,
else. Got
basically,
it. It's
yeah.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So
the net is they raised a bunch of money from Sequoia
Wow.
and then Aaron, the CEO, said, hey, Andrew, you know a lot about our business. You're entrepreneurial. You know about space. We need a CEO. Can you like come run this?
right.
Because I can't, because I had this other thing. And so I called my wife and I said, hey, like, what do you think about this? And,
We're moving to California.
No, so we didn't move. So
Okay.
I never moved.
Wow.
I've always been here. Or my
I always
family-
thought you moved there.
Yeah, well, my
Wow.
family's always been here. I just was, so part of the deal was.
Because you're not a good friend.
That's true. Actually,
because
truth
I
be
live
told,
on an
hold
airplane.
on. Truth be told, I've been trying to get in touch with this man for 10 years. So until Matt Chang actually said, yeah, you should actually call
well,
Andrew Rush.
Matt's he's a very
He's a
forceful
connector.
dude.
We all know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
slow your roll there, my man.
right.
There you go.
So-
There you go.
Row slow.
Yeah, no. So I was just on the road. You know, I was on the road all the time, and my wife was like, well, you know, if you're going to be on the road like more than 50% of the time, we're going to get, you know, I'm going to get a dog, and so so we ended up getting 2 retired racing greyhounds. She got that out of the deal, and so that was kind of how I wound up at Made in Space. Did the pivot from, you know, from law to space.
So Made in Space at the time was based in California.
That's right.
You took over. How did you convince them to move the headquarters to Jacksonville, Florida, which I
Off
would
of
think
Phillips Highway.
right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a great spot.
Phillips and Bay Meadows.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And
no,
we've all probably passed that building a million times.
Right.
Can actually a show of hands know where Made in Space is? 2, 3? Okay, cool. Yeah, you guys have all passed it though a million times. So
Kenny's been there. So,
yeah.
yeah. So the company was originally based in Moffett Field, California, which is an Air Force base immediately adjacent to Mountain View, California. You know, the epicenter of Silicon Valley. So everything cost what you would expect it to cost in the most expensive zip code in the United States, which turns out to be an important factor. Because we were,
I would think so.
Exactly, yeah. So we were building this company. When I joined, it was like a dozen folks. We did about $1.6 million in revenue that year. And you know, we were trying to hire these like awesome mechanical engineers and aerospace engineers and electrical engineers and like build this business up. And a lot of those folks, they like to tinker outside of work hours. Like really good mechanical engineers, they want to play in their garage at home and on like in nights and weekends on, you know, some 3D printed go-kart that they have built. And then they want to come to the office and play with their, you know, the space hardware, the payload that's going to, you know, 3D print some new thing during the day. In order to afford a garage in Silicon Valley, you need to make like $1 million a year, and you know, space companies don't pay $1 million a year. So it was actually it was a shorter putt than you would think to say, hey, building satellites in the most expensive zip code in the United States, where you can't have the lifestyle that you want, doesn't make sense for the business, doesn't make sense for you as a person, as a family. And you know, when I joined Made in Space, we started a small office here. I had a couple of people that worked for me that came over from the law firm, and we built up a little nucleus of engineering and operations talent here. And so ultimately, we went to the state and we said, hey, like, could you help us if we like were to move the company? And so they gave us some incentives. But really, it was the pitch of like, I literally said to folks, I said, you're paying $2,500 a month for like a room in a house with 2 other dudes.
Yeah. It's like 3 or 4 level bunk beds.
Right.
That turn into a living room during the day.
Yeah.
I lived in
Yeah.
New York, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
Smelled like shame and ramen. Yeah.
Space shaving
1,000
ramen.
Space shame and ramen.
Yeah. And I said, look, I
it. That's
pay
a trio.
I pay $2,500 a month for a mortgage that has, and I got a pool and a garage and 3/4 of an acre.
Right.
Now-
On the water. Yeah. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Now nowadays maybe that's not quite as true in Jacksonville, but that was.
But it used to be.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was
very true.
That was the pitch, and that convinced a lot of folks. So we moved. I mean, we I think 80% of the team moved from the valley.
Wow.
And then we grew, you know, and then we staffed up here.
So that's another. So obviously, two recruiters, so we've been in recruiting and talent acquisition forever. There was no space tech company in Jacksonville prior to Made in Space. Is that an accurate statement, or was there someone else that I didn't know about doing something here?
No, there wasn't really any
Right.
space to speak of.
So to convince all of them to move here, yes, obviously financially it does make complete sense. But from recruiting, how did you handle that?
You know, the space sector is an interesting one from a recruiting perspective because there isn't one central hub of activity.
I mean, we think of like Cape Canaveral and Houston.
Right.
That's what I like automatically go to.
Right. Those are two.
Well, and SpaceX too, because of California.
Right.
But yeah.
So Houston and Cape Canaveral are very like human spaceflight focused, right?
Yes.
That's the astronauts they train in Houston and do cool things there, and then they come to the Cape Canaveral and they blast off into space. That's that But there's a ton of activity.
There's no big deal. Just blast off into space. That's fine. Yeah.
There's a ton of activity in Denver. There's a ton of activity
Yes, yeah.
in Southern California. Before Silicon Valley got really expensive, there was a ton of activity there. Obviously, we talked about Houston. Albuquerque, New Mexico is actually a little sizable hub. So folks in the space industry kind of recognize that they're going to move. Like if
Right.
you go to Georgia Tech, you get an aerospace engineering degree, you're not going to stay in Atlanta and do
Right.
space. You're going to move somewhere else. And so that was a tailwind for us in terms of recruiting. We also, honestly, the pitch that I gave people was like, look, Jacksonville, and I firmly believe this, and this is what I think I would encourage everybody to say this to folks when you're recruiting, is I firmly believe that Jacksonville is an amazing place to build a business because your employees of any stage of life can find a nice place to live here. If you're young and a hipster and you want a cool walkable place, we have Riverside or we have Jack's Beach.
Riverside's hipsters. That's I live in Riverside, so yeah.
Right.
By default, I'm a hipster. That's
right.
cool.
If you're early, if you're like building your family, we have good schools. We have very nice suburban areas. If you like the beach life, we have that. If you like the river life, we have that. We, knock on wood, this year we'll have a good football team. Go Jags.
Go Jags.
And we have 1.5 million people. So but the flip side of it is you don't pay for the level of infrastructure you have here in your cost of living. Like it costs as much to live in Huntsville, Alabama, as it does to live here. So that was a pretty compelling pitch to people.
I totally
Getting good
agree.
at these pitches.
Yeah, you are. Okay, so Made in Space. Then you sold that to Redwire.
That's right.
Right. So how did that happen? How was it? Was it for sale? Were you looking to sell, acquire, or what was that story?
So after we sold Made in Space, somebody said something to me that really stuck with me, which is that oftentimes you find that you end up selling your company when you least expect it, when things are going
right.
when you're not looking, basically.
Right. Someone approaches you. They're seeking you out.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we had won a couple of pretty significant contracts with NASA, and had started executing on those. And we had started negotiating an investment from a large aerospace and defense company. And as part of that negotiation, they said, "Hey, we don't want you to. We want a right of first refusal on your company." Against against our competitors, against these other big companies. And we're like, well, maybe we should go talk to those guys first before we sign this and just say, hey, would you be interested in investing or doing something? And so that basically kicked off a sales process. And we did this kind of market check, and that ultimately landed on a couple of people making some very compelling offers. And then we worked the process. And that, which was really at an interesting time because that was the start of COVID. So we were
Great year. It's a great year.
Yeah. So we were
Banner 2020.
Big contract, growing the company, and then found ourselves running this process all the, and during the day also being like, okay, how do we deal with social distancing and the fact that all these people have to come and work on hardware, but we don't, we're getting all this guidance from the federal and state level about what to do.
That is interesting. I don't know how you do hardware with 6 feet distance. I have no idea how to do that, but yeah, I'm sure there was a physics to it. So yeah.
Well, they know a lot about space.
That's right.
Very, very well put.
They're just going to keep coming.
It's great. It's great.
So
That
from
was so
there,
bad.
so after Redwire, so what was the transition worked pretty well? Like they didn't lay anyone off. They kind of just kept. Was it from an acquisition standpoint pretty smooth, or did you feel that it was hard at all?
Yeah, no, I would say that we, especially from the beginning, it was a very collegial process integration. I mean, so Redwire was started by a private equity company, and they were doing what they call a roll-up, which is where you kind of buy several companies and combine them and integrate them together and sort of, by their powers combined, make a better thing, and then ultimately monetize. And so Made in Space was really the core of Redwire. So we got a new brand, maybe a little bit more ambiguous brand than Made in Space, but we got a new brand, and then
Made in Space basically tells your business model.
Right, yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much.
Redwire
right there.
is like
I know
don't
what
cut
you
that.
do. Yeah.
Don't do it. It's going to explode.
yeah. Don't
Yeah.
cut us. You need us for this program. Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Yet again, a zinger from Israel. So that's good.
That was great. Yeah. Starcatcher is a much more metaphorical, though literal name. Nothing will match Made in Space. But no, it was a very good process, right? And like any ownership change or any combination, there are growing pains, and there
Right.
Folks kind of learning to play well with one another,
Right.
and learning to kind of operate at a higher level. Because a lot of the companies that we bought at Redwire, they were amazing companies. They had really tight relationships with their customers, but they were kind of delivering products and services through grit and heroism. Mm-hmm. And where you want, and that's great, but where you want to get is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You want to get to process and just consistent delivery, and so helping folks along that kind of level up in that way was an interesting journey.
So from there, right? Where did the idea of Starcatcher? Give us the pitch of Starcatcher. Tell us about what you're working on now, because
Right.
it is pretty fascinating for
Yeah.
what I know.
So I've personally and professionally always been about enabling people to do new things in space, enabling people to do more things in space. And we are in this amazing era as a people. We are in what I believe to be the second golden age of space. That's not just motivated by national pride and trying to beat the Soviets, but actually driven by commercial, by by the recognition that space is an integral part of our daily life. We all interact with space all the time. GPS satellites drive your phones, help you drive from point A to point B, give signals to keep our banking going, and that's just one of many, many different things. And so we're going from 5,000 or 6,000 satellites in space to 50,000 satellites by the end of this decade.
I had no idea.
Which is a huge number, right?
Yeah.
But we have
one more.
one more zero. It's just one more. But those satellites are, by and large, satellites that use an average of 1,000 to 1,500 watts of power, which is about what your refrigerator at home runs on. But we want those satellites to do really taxing things. We want them to do broadband telecommunications to your Starlink dish, or one day to just straight to your phone. That requires a lot of power. We want to take modern NVIDIA GPUs and put them in satellites and do AI and machine learning processing on orbit so that we can provide not just raw pictures, but actually insights to people. And that requires a lot of power. And there's a myriad national security applications that are high power, that need to protect our nation and to protect our planet, really. And so we looked at this and we said, hey, basically these are all constrained by power. They want 5 or 10 times more power than they have. So what do we do when we have a geographic concentration of customers and they all have a common need? Well, we often build shared infrastructure. Companies like American Tower did this for cell phone towers in the 90s, and just really helped explode the mobile device connectivity network of not only our nation but our planet. And so we said, hey, we can actually technologically collect, concentrate, and beam solar energy to existing satellites, to their existing solar arrays, and give them more power, give them higher concentrations of power, give them power even when they're in eclipse. And that will enable folks to do more on orbit. We have this one client that's under LOI with us that they're building a satellite constellation where they have this really awesome imager where they take high resolution images of the Earth, twice as better than anybody else does commercially. And then they have 12 NVIDIA GPUs on board the spacecraft because they want to take pictures and then process those pictures and send insights to the customer, not just raw data. So if you're like the Coast Guard, they're not just going to take a picture and send it to you and be like, oh, that's a cloud, oh, that's land. Then you go sift through it. They're going to process those images on board and send you pictures of ships. And then not only that, but say, hey, these guys over here, they have their tracking transponders off. So maybe go take a look at them. That spacecraft, in order to do their full, operate all the time operations, they need 5,500 watts of power available. But because their spacecraft is really small, they have all these size, weight, and power constraints on it, they only have 600 watts available. So they do what we do in space. They duty cycle the spacecraft. They charge up and they do the thing, and then they wait, another 80 minutes and they do the thing again. Which isn't really ideal to help support their customers or to generate revenue. So we can actually give them that additional power and basically make each one of their spacecraft have 10 times the revenue generating capability, 10 times the operational capability. Yeah. And so that's the power of what we're building, the Starcatcher network, this network of power beaming satellites in space that will one day, if I have anything to say about it, make power availability, just ubiquitous in low Earth orbit.
So were you at Redwire at the time when this idea was coming with your partners,
No.
or was this after you're down and you said, what kind of problem can I solve now?
I left Redwire the end of 2022 and got to spend all of the holidays with my family, and they were like, "Wow, who are you?" And
it's
that was,
Andrew, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Dad. Yeah.
Could you go find something to do now that we know who you are?
Yeah, exactly.
You spent too much time with us.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have two co-founders with Starcatcher, a gentleman named Mike Snyder, who I've been working with for 10 years. He was our chief engineer at Made in Space, and he was our CTO at Redwire. And so he and I have always, nights and weekends been kicking ideas around. And so he's CTO at Starcatcher. And then I have another co-founder named Brian Leinvert, who was a VC for 5 years. And then before that, he was an operator at Amazon. And we met him through some other kind of space projects and just said, hey, we talked about a lot of different ideas, MMA in space and other kind of things like that, and then this is the one that we landed on. Yeah,
15 ideas and got down to this one.
So out of all the ideas, with the individuals that you're shooting back and forth with, how do you kind of get your heading? So MMA in space versus what you landed on are I would say those are pretty far reaches in between each other. So when, and we're also talking about space. So when do you pitch an idea to, obviously, and I think there has to be a lot of trust in who you're pitching it to,
right?
Before you then take it to the world. Yeah. Because it's that's not going to work because we need to beat it up and show that because we're talking about not sci-fi, but real fi.
Right.
Or just sci, maybe?
Right. Yes.
Just sci.
Yeah.
So what is what is that approach to like, okay, because we're talking about the not yet even fathomed.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about that at the society. Yeah. What part of your talk is like, how do you pitch this to an investor that is something completely over their head that it's
but
never been done
even
before.
prior to pitching it to the investor,
right?
How do you go back and forth with your
partners?
Partners.
Yeah. Well, Manny Pacquiao wouldn't return our phone calls, so MMA in space got left on the drawing board.
That was tabled.
Yeah.
We're gonna put a pin in that one.
Right. We're still working on that.
Circle back.
If anybody can help, please see me after. So it really is. I think there's okay. What's the art of the possible technologically, or the art of the near possible. And then there's really what do the customers need? So maybe to say that in a different way, it's like you have these big visions, right? Like like I said, I grew up on Star Trek, right?
Right.
Like that is the vision of the future that I would like to move the ball toward.
Mirror.
But we have to take those big visions and break them down into digestible chunks. And then say, okay, what can I accomplish with some amount of seed capital that will provide value to folks? And so what we really did is, we had a couple of ideas, and we kicked them around and said, and got excited about several of them. And then I just started calling people that I knew in the space sector, and said, hey, like, Todd, I have this idea. Can I talk to you about it? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, okay, like we're going to do this power beaming thing, and I think it would help your company in this way and that way. And we started, and then Todd would say, yeah, like it would. Like maybe we would have to change this or that, and also here are 3 other ways that you might use this. And then I talked to a few more people, and we really started to get a head of steam around it when we just consistently were having conversations with folks where they were like yes-anding the concept.
Okay.
And that was really validating. I mean, it's and just having the conversations with folks from the perspective of like, hey, I'm kind of thinking about this. Here's the high level thing. And as you said, like having a level of trust with those folks, both from the perspective that they're not going to like take my idea and go run and do it at Northrop Grumman or something like that.
Right.
But also that they're constitutionally equipped and willing to give me, a good read on it. Right. It's not, I didn't call up somebody in the the used car market and say, hey, what do you think about this? And called up folks that that were in the space sector.
Also named Todd in the used car market.
Yeah.
I think I met him.
Yeah. Me too.
It's a good friend.
Yeah.
All right.
Reliable. Trust.
At this point, we're going to actually open it up. Becca's going to help us out here. So first Kelly actually has the first question. So
Kelly and Phil were giggling earlier, so I'm really worried.
We do want to know why you guys were giggling. So
lots of questions, but no. First, was there when you're out there fundraising to start this, was there a fundamental patent that it's based on, or was it all existing technologies of beaming power, collecting power, storing power in space, and all that? Was there an unknown hurdle that you're raising money against to figure out, or was it assembling existing technologies and just providing the service?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I'm a big believer that your business model shouldn't require you to win a Nobel Prize in order for it to close. So that means that we're combining a series of existing technologies and integrating them in a way that nobody has really done before. And so one of the very first things we did is file a provisional patent application. And we're working to develop an intellectual property protection strategy around that and then prosecute that. And honestly, that's something that I think is for technology companies is something that's important to have. Not really from the perspective, and this is heretical as a former patent lawyer, not really as a thing to prosecute your competition with, but as a somewhat tangible, transferable representation of your, technology. That if Amazon comes and says, I want to buy your company, like you can say, hey, I have 50 patents and patent applications pending, and there are real market metrics that say how much each one of those are worth, and it's something that then they can buy and then they can go prosecute people. So.
Gotcha. And quick follow-up if I can while I got the mic.
Sure.
So the other aspect of overcoming the investor kind of piece, because you've obviously did it successfully, would be the dependencies that you have. So I'm sure things like SpaceX and Blue Origin and these investments are tailwinds in a way, but then you see the dependencies like astronauts stuck on the ISS and all this other stuff, like of the impacts and risks that could have in your business model. So like it's very limited now. I assume you're depending on those commercial space companies to actually make this all possible, which is a big risk. Like, was that a big pushback? Or?
Yeah, we got every objection that we could think of that you would give to a space company for people not to raise money. It takes too long. The market's dominated by the government. It's so capital intensive. You're dependent on all these other people. We got all those objections. And the way we ran our process to raise money, we started with people we knew and smaller firms. And basically got all the questions and then got really crisp answers. So, somebody saying to me like, hey, SpaceX, they're doing everything. Like, isn't Elon just gonna do this? And the first time we got to answer that question was like, well, let me tell you why Elon's not interested in that. But then the answer we got to
skirting around the question.
Right. But then the answer we got to, like the crisp answer is, it is the best day in the history of my company for Elon Musk to start a power beaming service, because that makes it table stakes. And other people
validates it.
Yeah, it validates it. And exactly right. And the people that don't want to work with SpaceX because Starlink or Falcon 9 are competitive with them, they will come to us. Those people, by the way, that person, by the way, is named Jeff Bezos, and he's the richest man in the world. So we developed,
not to name drop,
right. So we developed like more crisp responses to those objections, and then once we were equipped with that, we were able to, when we got we kind of moved up to that kind of next tier of investors and could give those answers really crisply. And that really smoothed, the process for raising capital. Still, it is a practical concern to say, hey, you're dependent on SpaceX, you're depending on all these other folks, and space really is a team sport, right? Like we all have to work together. We all know each other like pretty well, and honestly, you bake that into your raise plan. You say, well, if everything goes well, I need this amount of money. If everything goes normally, I need this amount, and everything goes a little bit sideways, I need this amount. So you try to raise, raise with margin, Yeah.
D all the above.
Yeah, exactly.
So, even though we're opening it up, I have a question. So, in playing nice in the sandbox with everybody, sure. And you reference like this is the next age, and we're not in a space race with USSR Russia. Or anything like that, but. So with that said, have you found it easy, or is in this new space journey, is there everybody working together, all the other countries that have somewhat of a stake in the space program, or is there still a little bit of a pissing contest, or is that gone, and how's everybody actually playing along with their trucks?
How have you overcome that?
Yeah. So I would say, I guess maybe I would modify. I would add a little bit nuance to what I said earlier. This second golden age of space we are in is not solely based on national like nation level competition.
Right.
It has other pillars.
Okay.
Like namely the the explosion of commercial. Yeah. I mean we are at like the pacing threat to our national security. Or the perspective is that the pacing threat is China. We are the Chinese have a space station. They are fielding assets all the time. The Russians are also doing the same, and space has been a superpower of the United States. Basically, from a national security perspective, it's like space and stealth are like two superpowers the United States figured out way before everybody else. And so that drives a lot of investment. I mean, we saw in the last decade the creation of the Space Force. Like the recognition that a uniformed branch of the military is solely dedicated to the space domain, and so that, and I as a U.S. space company cannot cannot do business with like the Chinese. I can't send something to their space station.
Okay.
I also am subject to export control laws, which means limits me to working with U.S. citizens, green card holders, asylees, those kind of folks, and it also limits the pools of capital that I draw on, because having a Middle Eastern nation on my cap table, having the PIF on my cap table, it forecloses certain customers from me.
Right.
It's a no-go.
Yeah. Well, not
Yeah.
necessarily. It just means that there's certain customers that
Limitations.
aren't going to work with you
So
anymore.
the sandbox is complicated.
The sandbox is complicated.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, but certainly from a I would say a commercial space, a new space company perspective, like we all want each other to succeed. And
Right.
even where and even in like the older space, right? There are folks that have been like Boeing and Lockheed have been flying rockets for a long time. When SpaceX has a failure, they call SpaceX and say, "Hey, how can we help you?" Even though like SpaceX is like their in some corners they view SpaceX as their mortal enemy. So there is
Right.
that
That's cool.
Yeah,
That is cool.
Yeah, it is. It honestly is.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know if anyone else. Oh, none of them. You go. I don't know this question.
We'll get back to you, Philip.
Sorry.
You go.
Who exactly is your customer?
Yeah.
And then I have another question.
Sure. Yeah. So our customers are satellite operators. So on the on the national security side, Space Development Agency, Space Force, NASA, on the civil side, and then on the commercial side, people that are doing Earth imaging, people are doing telecommunications. There's lots of folks that are building these massive constellations to do broadband telecommunications from space. Those are our customers.
Okay. And beaming energy is like straight out of Spaceballs, right? I mean, if we're really going to go all the way back there. I
They've
love
gone
it.
to plaid.
Could you talk a little bit more about the economies of space, like commerce in space, and how it's evolved over like the last 10 and the next 10?
Yeah.
From a domestic and international perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Spaceballs, great movie.
One of the best.
So we used to ask a question of all our employees when we first hired them at Made in Space. We'd say, "Hey, what do you like better, Star Trek or Star Wars?" The correct answer is
That's
Star
an
Trek.
interview
Spaceballs.
question?
Oh, I thought you were going to say the correct answer.
I was about to
Mel
say the
Brooks,
correct answer is
Spaceballs.
Neither Spaceballs.
This question was asked of the immediate past head of NASA, this guy Jim Bridenstine. He's like Navy pilot, was a congressman from Oklahoma, great guy. He was asked Star Trek or Star Wars, and he said Spaceballs. So yeah,
That's a fantastic
Yogurt.
Yes.
I hate yogurt.
Ludicrous speed.
ludicrous.
Yes.
Yeah, but so the economy, the space economy, the space sector has really evolved over the last 10 years. And they're because of two main things. Like 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, 15 years ago, it was largely we would talk about space more as the space program, right? Like we had the space shuttle and what NASA was doing and what the Air Force and other people were doing. And then they were primarily buying from diversified aerospace and defense contractors, Boeing, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, a little bit of Raytheon. There wasn't really a small, there was a whole community of really small space companies.
Yeah, like private, but it was
Right,
really small.
really small.
Right.
But then once you got to a certain size, then you just get gobbled up by the big guys. 10 years ago or so, things really broke open because of two things. One is the devices that everybody has in their phones or their laps or whatever, because like really the mobile device revolution made compute and imagery cheap and ubiquitous. And we could take those technologies and put them in satellites and do new and interesting things with them and shrink the size of satellites from the size of your car to the size of a bread box. And SpaceX came along and took the cost of launch from $50,000 a kilogram to like $2,000 a kilogram. It was still a lot to send my overweight butt to space, but means that I can go with my buddies and build a satellite in a garage for $100,000 and put it in space for another $100,000 and make money. And so that opened up this incredible like commercial imagery, revolution. Really,
And doesn't SpaceX have like what 80% of all things that shift up?
They have,
thought-
like, they call up Elon to get satellite coverage in like war zones.
Right.
So,
And sometimes he gives it, and sometimes he doesn't.
right.
Yeah. So SpaceX is now responsible for 80 or 90% of the mass to orbit globally.
That's insane.
Which is
Energy, though.
and so
Starcatcher.
Right.
Is, I don't know.
And so SpaceX is building this awesome thing called Starlink, which is a global telecommunications constellation to give you high-speed internet, and then they ultimately want to connect directly to your cell phone and give you data that way. That requires an enormous amount of power to do, and SpaceX is brute forcing the problem. They're building the world's largest rocket to put the satellites up, and and Starlink satellites right now have solar arrays that are like bigger than this room. And once Starship is really flying, put these up, they're going to have like the better part of football fields in terms of solar arrays attached to them to give them enough power to close data links with your devices consistently and do that kind of broadband. And that's really cool, and it also is another step forward toward his desire to die on Mars, but hopefully not on impact, to retire on Mars. That's his line, not mine.
That is a good one.
But we at Starcatcher, we think that there's a more elegant solution to that, which is to recognize that basically one of the principles we're taking advantage of is that a solar array, and I'm going to be a little bit of a geek here for a second, it's a band gap semiconductor. What that means is if I send one set of photons at it at a certain wavelength, it'll convert that to like 1 unit of energy. If I send 10, times the photons at that wavelength at it or better, it'll produce 10 units of energy. So what we do at Starcatcher is you can use a smaller spacecraft with a more modestly sized set of solar arrays, and we can give you a lot more power. So your mass to orbit, the cost of the cost of your spacecraft can still be low, and you can still do things like close direct to cell links from space.
Like the NVIDIA of beaming.
That's a really good line.
Boom. Philip.
We'll go.
Oh, sure, yeah.
He's
had the microphone.
had the mic for a while.
Philip's incredibly polite.
I'm hanging out. Andrew, I heard you talk about the importance of vision a lot, and I heard your vision for Made in Space, over the years, and you communicate that, I think, really strongly. When you go to look at like an acquisition by a private equity company,
Sure.
that vision's going to change more toward one that's a bit more tactical, a bit more financial. How did you kind of help the team through that transition between, the startup to a part of a more, consistent size company?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because one of the things in space companies, especially smaller space companies in the last 5 or 10 years, there are a lot of amazingly talented folks that work at them that especially like I mentioned, so Redwire had a big presence, has a big presence in Denver. Across the street in Denver is Lockheed Martin, Ball Aerospace. These like giant companies that would love to have a bunch of brilliant people working on them. For smaller companies in that area, the vision and the flexibility to execute upon that vision is the reason that they work at small space company versus Lockheed, right? Because Lockheed, they feel less connected to the vision. One of the things that we did at Made in Space that I think helped with the transition, and then we emphasized once we were acquired by a financial buyer, was that we talked about vision, but we also talked about the way we were implementing the vision. Because it wasn't unique to Made in Space to say, hey, we want to see millions of people living and working in space and factories in space making goods for all of mankind. Like that's straight out of Robert Heinlein, Spaceballs, whatever. But we said, look, the way that we're doing this is is American dynamism. We're building a business that's a profitable business that then can take its profits and reinvest it in the team and in the technology to move things forward. So the team already had, before we were acquired, had the context of, had some financial context around the vision and recognized and bought in to some extent to the notion that, a vision without works is nothing, and the way we accomplish our things is through a for-profit organization.
You laid the groundwork with that early.
Right.
It was going to need to eventually.
Well, it was both a groundwork that supported an exit strategy and supported a transfer of value and keeping people bought into that. But it was also that also really helps from an execution perspective for the customer, right? Because you say, look, it's our job. We can't just sit here and think big thoughts and draw on whiteboards all day. We have to go build the hardware that the customer wants and deliver it for them, so that they get what they need. So that then maybe that was they let us hit basically a single for them. If we over deliver on that, then they'll give an opportunity to hit a home run for them. And hitting the home run moves the needle more toward the grand vision. And we were able to translate that, I wouldn't say 100% successfully, but we did translate that and try to stay focused on those kinds of that intersection of vision and execution when we were acquired by Redwire. Because again, we were buying a lot of companies and putting them together that were small. I mean, Space was small too. And so saying, hey, we're, it's a slightly different twist on the vision. And yeah, there's these financial guys that they like space, but they like IRR. And so we can all work together, because ultimately that's actually how you move the ball forward. That's actually how you go from idea to reality. That was a great question.
Is this on? More of an engineering question. I guess before you go in front of investors, you probably have done a prototype of your product. So my question is, how far away are you from your prototype to a product launch? And how much, so that's one, how far? Two is, how much of that seed money that you received would be dedicated to the engineering portion of your product?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So space is a more capital intensive business than other sectors, and so we don't have the luxury of being able to kind of create an MVP on a laptop and then show somebody hey, here's the core of how this would work. Though, I think that's true for a lot of different sectors. That you can show kind of wireframes and examples and say, hey, here's how this might work at scale, or when we get a concentration of customers. So we put a lot of energy into, benchtop, tabletop, saying, hey, here's the different subsystems, and then simulation, of the overall light efficiency path, in ANSYS and those kind of engineering tools. We also put a lot of energy into, because the tech is important, but the product and service and saying the customer is actually going to buy this, that's really, really important. So before we really started engaging with investors, we had multiple letters of intent from potential customers, like executed, that said, hey, like, this is how much power we need for this many satellites, and this is a rough amount that we would pay. So that gave people something to that gave investors something to tie off on, and ourselves as well. Our seed round, we have like 2 people that aren't engineers that work for us, and that will be the same. That will be the case for a long time, right? All the resources go into engineering and customer development. Those are the 2 buckets that we deploy our capital into. And over the next 2 years, we'll be doing a series of ground demonstrations showing, hey, we can do that entire workflow, that entire power chain to power customer satellites on the ground. And then eventually we'll build a subscale satellite, not quite breadbox size, a little bit bigger than that, and send that to space and get flight heritage on the core technology. So it's not enough money to field something that is going to be, it's going to generate $10 million a year in revenue, but it's just getting out showing, hey, I can do this in space, I can do this on the ground. That's the goal.
Yeah.
I do. I have 2 questions. So the first question is you presented the mindset of problem solving, which drove out where you are today. And in that light, I would like to ask 2 questions. So the first is you're going to put a lot more satellites in space, and there's a lot there presently. So do you have a wraparound solution for how to get all the garbage out of space that is going to exist as a result of this remarkable opportunity? That's question 1.
Sure.
Question 2 is, there's some people right now that plan to spend a week in space, and now they're going to be there until February. And so it's hard to balance the concept of new frontier in space and we can't get the people back balance. And just for us to carry the message forward of no, space is cool, space is fun, let's do new stuff. It's also nice to say we can bring people back.
Right.
Just at a human level. So I just want to hear your solutions on those 2 components.
Yeah, space. So with regard to the first question, hey, there's a lot of stuff that's going up, and once it's exceeded its operational use, maybe we should clean it up. Space does have a tragedy of the commons problem, kind of like our oceans. Right, we threw garbage at them for a long time and said, "Oh, the ocean's huge. Don't worry about that." And now we see some of the consequences of that. And similarly, in our environment, space currently does have a space debris problem. There have been a lot of satellites up there for a long time, and they get old and they stop working. And if they're above a certain orbit, they won't naturally decay. They'll just be up there, and sometimes they run into each other, and then they create a lot more debris. There's this notion called the Kessler syndrome, which is just a runaway smashing of satellites into one another that pollutes low Earth orbit. If you saw the movie Gravity, that's basically what's happening to Sandra Bullock in that movie. We don't currently have a
Gravity is definitely not doing well.
Oh, okay. The movie, Corey. No, that's good. That's good. Israel, you have a run. He's auditioning for your job.
I'm not going to go toe to toe with Corey. I've known him for a long time.
Yeah. You never go toe to toe with Corey.
He's got some wit.
We'll lose.
He's got some wit about him.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
So the problem we have with our tragedy that comes in space right now is kind of the problem that we've had historically in other environments and other comets, is that there isn't someone that pays to clean up space debris. So we are seeing satellites get hit by small pieces of other satellites or flecks of paint or whatever. There's literally like holes, like impact points on the International Space Station because of this. But there's nobody that pays to clean it up. Starcatcher and other companies do have solutions for deorbiting things so that we can maintain, so we can clean things up. And the FCC has started to put rules on it and say, hey, you have to bring your satellite down within 5 years. You have to show us that you can do that within a certain confidence level. But it is something that we do need. We do need we need, honestly, we need legislative action to say, look, whether it's the United States or a coalition of nations that say we need to clean this up and we need to pay people to do it. That's the kind of action that we do need. So your second question, it is amazing to live in the time that we live in right now, where especially all of us here in Florida, right? Like, it is boring to see a rocket launch. Like nobody, like 10, 15 years ago.
How many rockets do you launch?
A few. But it's boring. It's boring to see rockets launch now, right? I have a buddy
That's
who,
like your opinion, man.
Yeah, right. Well, I will say this. Like, I have a buddy who his 5-year-old was like, I don't care about seeing a rocket launch unless the booster's coming back to land. Right, and that literally wasn't something that existed, until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
That would
like
never
the
even crossed.
spoiled brat.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Exactly. Yeah. But
Oh, you do?
yeah. But it's still really hard.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and SpaceX, which is extremely consistent and competent, is grounded right now, because they had a booster come back and land and fall over on the drone ship and blow up, because it's still not totally routine, and so right now Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams are on the space station. They were supposed to be up there for 8 days. They've been up there for 3 months. They're going to come back in February.
Yeah,
of
2025. That they announced that today, didn't they?
Yeah. And Butch, by the way, is an astronaut he's got a special place in Maiden Spacers' hearts, because he operated the first 3D printer on the International Space Station.
Really?
Yeah. So we have this cool connection with Butch, and so I'm glad that NASA's being very thoughtful. That NASA and Boeing are being very thoughtful about bringing them back, because we do. In space, we basically do like statistical analyses on risk, and so what they've been doing with the Starliner is basically saying, hey, what's the likelihood that that more thrusters don't work? Because they have triple redundant thrusters, and they've had one set of them not work. And okay, what's the likelihood that all of them are going to fail? And okay, it's 3%. But they're basically saying, hey, we as the representatives of the American people don't want to put these folks' lives at risk when there are alternative modes of getting home. Because there are 2 other vehicles that are highly reliable, the Soyuz and the Dragon, to bring people back. And so they're making the right call in terms of protecting American lives and protecting folks that we all, at least I grew up thinking astronauts were the most amazing people ever, and they're really amazing folks that deserve us taking the extra step if we can to protect their lives. And that's, honestly, I think that is really inspiring, that we're not just being cavalier and saying, well,
taking a risk.
you got a 4 out of 5 chance of getting back. Just climb in there.
You'll make it.
Yeah. So so that's to me, that's the message about, that's the message about this issue with the capsule that's on the space station right now, and that we're choosing not to bring people back because we as Americans, we as a commercial sector, that care and value about these folks' lives, and we have built up such great infrastructure that we have options. It's that vehicle that may or may not have some issues isn't the only game in town.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and listen to you guys. This is awesome. Hey, very inspirational. I want to bring it back to a little bit of local and get your thoughts.
Sure.
So, lived around the world, lived around the country, and to my wife's chagrin, came back to Jacksonville a couple of years ago, and the city's got a lot of unrealized potential. You came back here. what can Jacksonville and the Northeast Florida area do, either governmental or commerce-wise, to bring talent like you're bringing here to this area to kind of, bring that potential to realization?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that this is actually another area where COVID had silver linings. Before COVID, and there's many folks in this room that lived this life, the prevailing wisdom was if you want to go raise, VC money, serious VC money, take your wagon
better
west.
get out of get out of Jacksonville.
Go to Silicon Valley and do it there. And COVID, a silver lining of COVID is that work from home broke that paradigm, like fundamentally in the VC community.
Like day 2, it broke it.
Yeah. I mean, it was already crumbling. Like,
right.
There were already folks that were going all over the nation investing, but like, today, the lead investor in my firm, I have not met in person. It's all been Zoom. And today, I know partners at Founders Fund that have not invested in a company according to them, a company in the San Francisco Bay Area in 3 years.
Yeah. Let's take away that money from San Francisco.
I would say that the thing that we can do is honestly just recognize that paradigm and say we can swing the bat as hard as everyone else in the nation.
Yep. Yeah, lean into it. For sure.
I know a lot of the folks here in this room, and I fundamentally believe that about you guys. The rooms in the Bay Area are not smarter than you all. They're not.
Thank you.
They're not smarter than you all. Their ideas are there can't there is and because of if you're exposing yourself to the trades, like the trade publications of the industry that you care about, you're oftentimes just as educated about that field as the people in the nexuses of those fields. So I would say part of it's just we all just have to say, hey, no, be persistent. We can go do it. And I honestly think that our local leaders having that frame of what's the best we can do rather than what are our impediments, is also a good is a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you, Beck. Hey, Andrew. I am.
It's all good. It's going straight into the.
I'm Israel's wife, Sheena. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Jacksonville. I know he's.
I think you outkicked your coverage here, buddy.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Can you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can hear me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very proud Jacksonville native, born and raised. Proud Floridian. My dad's from Hialeah, Florida. Also just big fan of space. I'm fighting a lot of October Sky and just visions of space camp commercials on my 90s television. I'm fighting that away to ask you my question. I'm extremely inspired by what you have said, and especially in knowing that you've been working so diligently undercover sort of, here in town. That's really brilliant, and thank you on behalf of Jacksonville. And I'm deeply inspired because what you just said, what you were speaking to about this being such a smart group of people, such a smart room, it really is. And I have personally worked very hard to surround myself by very, very bright people, very smart people. This is my best friend. She has the best questions. And the reason being, I found out at the age of 35 that I am autistic. I say this because I just know that this is a very big moment for our city and for just, people who have vision and can see exactly what it's supposed to look like, maybe can't articulate exactly how it's going to play out or who those key players are going to be and all of that involved. So thank you. And I realize that was more of a comment than a question, but here's my question. And it's, please forgive me if this is thinking too forward, but I do a lot of side hustle, special interest work in just understanding all of the ramifications of what is happening, because I'm a conservative, but also deeply, deeply concerned about the environment, as I know a lot of people are. There's just a lot of questions there, and understanding what dark oxygen is now. I don't know if I'm not sure, like, if there's any, if you're aware, but it's something that keeps me awake at night, is thinking about the ramifications of what we have done in the ocean and what is being created now. And knowing that the reasons that this is happening is because we're, working to create fuel. We're working to fuel our, I ask that because, I'm thinking on that sort of interstellar movie place.
Right, sure.
And I, some of my, I guess, trepidation around things is, are we going to be good? Are we? Right. And I think it's, these kinds of questions that I've never felt, like there was someone I could ask these things to until now. So anyway, all that to say, are these things that are being talked about that's all I need to know.
Yeah. No, Shana,
Cool.
well, thank you, first of all, for your very kind words. I feel very fortunate to just have been able to have the opportunities to try and do things, and then help, and then have had some great teammates to be successful in some areas, and certainly, I think it's very apt to be concerned about our human impact on the environment. We have demonstrably seen that we can have negative impacts on our planet, and and the negative impacts on our planet have negative impacts on us, right? And space is something that has actually been pretty impactful there, right? Like, the very first pictures of the Earth from space, like, drove environmental conservation movements, right? Saying, hey, look, there's no lines on that map. It's one big blue marble, and that's everyone, ever, right there. So we got to take care of this thing. Yeah, yeah, right. Or is it? Yeah. So, and it is. I'm a believer that us asking. Like us asking a question like you just asked and said, hey, are we going to be okay? Look, we're polluting our oceans in this way or that way, or what's the impact of this kind of radiation or what have you? That folks asking those questions and then saying, okay, and then, is the first step and is the thing that then drives us to find solutions, right? Like we as Americans, we as capitalists have been very good at identifying a problem and finding a solution and then moving forward. We've certainly had environmentalists for decades talking about risks of, whether it's pesticides or climate change or what have you, that have helped change the behavior and then stave off all, if not, some, if not all, of the potential impacts of those things. And I think as long as we're asking those questions and entrepreneurs are finding solutions, I think we're going to be fine. Certainly.
Hey, I just want to start off by saying thank you to everyone for this tonight. Like this has been eye-opening, and I want to share a little bit. Like this is completely different from everything that I do on a daily basis. But the one thing, so my wife was supposed to be here with me tonight, and she couldn't be. She's under the weather. But she's opened my eyes to really I didn't grow up in a world where the value of women was recognized at all. And we've been together 10 years and married for 8, and God, I love her. But she showed me what women can bring into our world. And so my question for you is what are you doing to make sure that is recognized, that's equal and fair? in this world as we go forward, like on this planet and in space?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I can relate to your entire question because I feel the same way about my wife. I think we've been married for maybe a little bit longer, but yeah, absolutely, right. And the space sector is one. I mean, just to be candid, it's one that has had a gender problem for a long time, because like aerospace engineering colleges graduate like 90% guys and 10% girls, and so we have to be very proactive about that, and recognizing that, like, look, like if you want to go ahead and call me woke and DEI and all those things, fine, I'll take it. Diversity of perspective and diversity of opinion makes the world better, because I come from yeah, thank you. Yeah, like, because I have my set of experiences, right? Like I said, my family's like 5th generation Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville's great. It's not the whole world.
Whoa.
Yeah,
This
whoa.
is taking a turn. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Interview's over.
Yeah, right. So what I've done historically is be affirmative about trying to post our jobs in places that that women and people of color will see them. There are organizations like the Brooke Owens Fellowship in Space that are all about getting young women into aerospace jobs, and Made in Space, we were a founding member of that fellowship. So those are the sorts of things that we do to try to drive that, and and a lot of us, not just in the space sector, but also in the tech sector more broadly, like we also have that kind of diversity, challenge, and it's not good enough. Like, I'll just say this too, and then I'll get off my soapbox. It's not good enough just to hire women and people of color into support roles, like into biz ops roles and those things. Like, you got to go find the engineers. Like, yeah, because again,
Right.
exactly, they're yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. That's
Yeah.
what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Awesome. Any more questions?
Hi, I really like the idea and I like the problem. My question was, you mentioned that you're basically taking a whole bunch of existing technologies and like making it into a new product.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that you're developing more hardware or software, or a mix of both?
So our solution is primarily a hardware solution. There are software elements. We joke that rockets and satellites are just robots with interesting hobbies. They all run on software for more.
Interesting hobbies.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, I mean,
that is really good.
And then from a folks that come and work for a company like ours, or come work for a space company generally, it's literally every engineering discipline, and even outside the engineering, it's literally every discipline, right? Like, as you heard, I'm a lawyer that found my way into the space sector. We have English majors, we have political science majors, we have every flavor of engineer that has worked for me in the past to build awesome space companies.
Excellent.
Okay, I just want to piggyback off that. So I am actually a teacher, a science teacher. So I am trying to figure out, I'm very inspired by what you say, like, what should I be telling the future generations? Because I've been doing this for 20 years, so
Sure.
I've had thousands of students at this point. And of course, I've always said, your future, most of you sitting in my room will be a science something at some point, because that's where our world is going to. And like my daughter, who has been wanting to be an engineer since she was 2, like has already put herself on the path in high school to be that eventually. So what would you recommend for our future, little friends coming out of high school, college, like what should they be doing to try to get in the path of what like your company's doing?
Yeah, well, I think at the kind of middle school, high school level, I think it's just like learning and like not just reading the like I don't know if they have, the zoo books equivalents or whatever that I had when I was growing up, but like if you're interested in space, like go read spacenews.com, go read Breaking Defense, go read space.com, and you can also interact with amazing folks in these areas, like Emily Calandrelli, the space gal. She's going to fly on Virgin Galactic, and she's going to have a good flight. She actively engages with folks on social media, and she's just like one of like many different folks. The Galactic gal, Camille, she does the same thing. There's a bunch of great content out there to just get exposed to and then interact, like learn from. And then at the college level, honestly, I tell the folks this all the time, and this is maybe good content for our recruiter friends here. I am less interested in the like 4.0 GPA Stanford aerospace engineering grad who is all he did was school, than I am interested in the like, woman that graduated from OSU with an aerospace engineering degree and has a 3.1 and built a rocket or built a payload that went to the International Space Station while she was in college.
Right,
and
like
was
passion.
on the improv team.
Right,
who was on the improv team. Like the practicals,
theater troupe. She was a thespian.
there, like that mix, yeah, because we're at the end of the day, like we want to build cool space stuff and make it work. And all due respect to the perfect Stanford strawman that I created, we're looking for folks that like got their hands dirty. So, yeah.
Excellent.
My name is Alyssa. I'm kind of new to this, so listening to all this is very intriguing. And I kind of want to pick back off of what Sarah asked about earlier and what your response was in regards to getting your mock-up or off the ground and whatnot. So after your mock-up is off the ground and whatnot, you're ready to launch. So in that time frame, I guess what I'm asking is like, how soon do you think after that mock-up is done and you'll start launching?
Right. Yeah. So our baseline plan is to have the first subscale satellite up in about 2 years. Once we put that up and demonstrate it and get lessons learned from that, because you always learn things the first prototype. We'll complete the detailed design on the kind of commercial power nodes. That's what we call the big satellites that are going to make up the constellation, and then we'll construct and test and launch the first couple of those. That having done this before, that's at least another 2 years. It's at least another 2 years. Try not to be Elon time and say like, oh yeah, it'll be in a year, and then it takes 5. But space is
Elon time.
Yeah. But we have big error bars sometimes on how long things take. But that's the plan today. It's a good question.
Do you have a contractual commitment of the first power delivered to the satellite?
So we have about a dozen letters of intent with a wide variety of customers, but we're not ready to disclose more than that.
One random but related thing to ask about this being in Jacksonville. Are you by chance a fan of Bruce Campbell or Evil Dead or Ash vs. Evil Dead? Anyone in this room? And I ask that because of the quote, "A city so nice, they named it Jacksonville." And I feel like that's applicable to this sort of a, moment in time.
She said she was my wife. I don't know this.
We don't. I'm a plant.
I've never
I
seen
used
her
him
in
as
my
my
life.
in. It's,
I feel like I'm not totally familiar with those, but I do feel like we're all familiar with the show The Good Place.
Yes.
And that maybe is a similar sentiment, right? Like
100%.
Jacksonville's landed in this weird spot of the social zeitgeist of people. We're not Cleveland. We're not that bad, but it's
We're not a 4-letter word of Ohio.
But exactly. And this is something that like, look, we all participate in sort of overcoming, and it's saying like, look, it's a great place, and it reminds me of another quote actually from Pirates of the Caribbean, Captain Jack Sparrow says, "Oh, you're the worst pirate I've ever heard of." He says, "Oh, but you have heard of me."
Yes. Yes.
So that's
Jacksonville.
Yes.
Jacksonville.
And just like the TGI Fridays in Jacksonville with Deadpool, there's
That's
just
funny.
some great ones. So anyway.
Yeah.
That's excellent. All right, any more questions? Corey.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, here it is.
I'm not going to say thank you guys because I had a bedroom alarm to be like, hey, go to sleep at 9, but now I got to stay up all night and do more research. Thanks, Andrew. You're like brilliant, dude. Ever since I met you, when we all met, you're going to spin off this planet, man. I love it. Speaking of, dumb question, are you going to go up Virgin Galactic? You've probably already done the zero G thing.
You've done the zero.
See?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Didn't have to ask.
I've done the zero G. It's super fun. And I was fortunate to go up with some of my team, and then a friend of mine who was a B-52 pilot, and so he was like, "Oh, this is just easy. I've done this all the time."
Table stakes.
Yeah, basically.
Virgin Galactic or
Yeah,
it's like $250,000, right?
I will say this, and this is maybe like a personal goal thing for Andrew. I would love
Third person.
I would love to build Starcatcher to a level where I could be talking about going to orbit, going to the International Space Station, or like Polaris Dawn, these flights that Jared Isaacman are doing.
You heard that goal on this podcast.
Yeah.
Start a GoFundMe,
And then
dude.
Andrew looking out that window and going, or porthole, that is my toaster. That is my bread box. Damn it.
That's my bread box.
That is
I built that.
I built that.
Yeah. We'll have to see how many dogs my wife ends up getting out of it.
Perfect. Are they golden doodles?
Greyhounds.
Greyhounds.
Just kidding. Okay, real question, last one, very simple. You made a quick comment, and this may apply or not, but to what you're doing exactly. But you said something about GPUs. Why? Is it because every single satellite involved now has just loaded with GPUs and they need all that power? Like, why did you make that comment?
Yeah. Well, it is so processing power generally on spacecraft for a very long time has been, literally like 5 or 10 years behind what you have on the ground. Like for a long time, most folks were using the equivalent of like a Pentium 2 as their core processor, and because really big defense contractors made them low power and made them radiation hardened. So the radiation environment in space, they could survive in that. Now we have developed software and some hardware techniques to make things that are radiation tolerant, that if they have some upset, like a bit gets flipped or whatever, because like a gamma ray hits it, we can recover it. And so that's enabled us to fly a lot more modern computing. But that is a revolution that's going on in space right now. So we used to fly satellites that were like dumber than dumber than like a
bread
2003
box.
F-150 or a bread box.
Yeah.
But we want to have the capabilities on orbit of a cluster. We want to do, and GPUs are a good kind of shorthand for the computing capacity that we want to put on orbit. Yeah.
Wasn't sure how you were using that.
Excellent,
Sort of a follow-up question to that.
Sure.
I'm curious if you're like 2 years out from a proof of concept, then is there any technologies or is there any advancements like that could happen that would expedite your time frame? And are there any like outside resources that you wish that you had access to that could expedite your time frame?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we're primarily capital constrained. We're not primarily technology constrained. And so for us, and this is an area that we push on, getting those first customers, that give us a contract to say, hey, we want this amount of power. That creates a catalyst for me to be able to go raise more money, in the equity and debt markets. drive, to push the business, further faster.
Any more questions? Or
Almost out of time, but I have one final question.
absolutely.
Because I've seen you knock wood a couple times, and I also know that you know a number of astronauts. So my question is, in regards to superstitions or things that the astronauts do, how superstitious are astronauts? And out of all the superstitious things that said astronauts that are superstitious do, what's the best?
Oh boy, you're gonna get a good one actually, because I just am in that kind of mood, I guess. I would say that. So I would say space people generally
It's a free space.
are pretty superstitious,
Sure.
right? Like there are things that we do about hardware there are things we do about launch that there's a lot of traditions too, right? Like the white room, the area the astronauts are in right before they go into the Dragon capsule or the shuttle, they all sign in. So there's everybody's got their signatures, and that's like a really awesome tradition. The weirdest superstition that I'm aware of, the best one, is that so for a long time, people could only get to space on the Russian Soyuz vehicle, and I think it might have been Yuri Gagarin because he flew on a predecessor of that, but some really early days Soviet astronaut, before he was getting on the rocket. So they wheel the rocket out on like on a train basically, and like they've got these big wheels, and he had to pee. So
He peed in the vodka.
No. He got out and he peed, and he peed like on one of the wheels. And so it is a tradition when anyone goes up in a Soyuz that they do
pee on
that.
the wheel.
Hence why we don't see more women in
space.
In space?
We figured it out.
I've never asked the female astronauts I know how they address that tradition.
It's like the jellyfish thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
that's
so peeing on the tire.
Yeah, that's
Do you have one more?
Do I have one more? That's not good enough.
No, I mean,
I was about to say that's
I would
pretty
say,
good.
I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I can be superstitious at times, and I don't need to go out to my car every time that something big might be happening in my life, and I piss all over my Audi. Like, that's not something I want to do. So maybe something that's easier to, apply to my life that might bring me good fortune.
I
I think it's peeing on the wheel. That's it. That's the closing argument of it. That's it.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Peeing on the wheel.
That guy down there is doing it already.
Welcome to Welcome to downtown Jacksonville. Yeah. No, this is awesome. Well, thank you very much for all of you guys. Thank you, Varick, for the amazing logo where it's at. That shirt is actually available up front. We also have the Starcatcher shirt for everybody here. And then also we've got some Society of Technology Explorers shirts as well. You guys have been an amazing audience, and thank you, Carlton, big time for this. This has been amazing. So thank you very much.